Hello, stroke warriors, TBI warriors, and families everywhere. Welcome back to Stroke Warrior Radio, where recovery finds its voice. Excuse me. Today we're welcoming back Kelly Tuttle. Kelly joined us previously to share her story as a traumatic brain injury survivor and a neurology nurse practitioner. This time we want to talk. We're not going to go through the entire accident and early recovery, but I want to talk about where you've gotten, how recovery has changed, uh, what you understand differently, because a lot of us don't recognize those changes, um, and the advocacy, especially that's grown out of your experience. And we'll spend some time talking about your book, your podcast, those kind of things. Um, you haven't how to keep your there's another book. Oh no, it's the same book. Okay, we'll get to that. Kelly, welcome back. It's great to have you with us again.
Thank you for having me, Ralph. I'm so excited to be here and to get to talk to your listeners again.
I'm glad you did. Since the last time that we talked, we talked about your injury, your accident, all of that. What's changed in your life?
Wow. Well, since my brain injury, which was from a car accident, I would say I went from being the energy bunny to
Yeah,
being an intentional tortoise.
okay.
And for me, one of my toughest brain injury symptoms is neurofatigue. So that fatigue that just is unrelenting and easily brought on. And so, when you only have so much energy in the day, then you got to be picky about the things that you do or choose to spend your energy on. And so progressively, as I worked through my recovery, there was this transition of kind of, letting it go of the old person, the old passions and goals, and then embracing the new person, which for me was a slowing down, more simple life, more gratitude, more focused on friends, family, and home rather than traveling and going out and doing this or that. So huge shift in the between the before and after. And like I said on your show last time, when I look back at who I was before and who I am now, I really like the person that I've become.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's been about a year since we talked, so those are some great changes. Where would you say, and you're what, 7 years post?
Actually 11.
11. Oh, okay. We're about the same. Where would you say you're in your recovery today?
I would call it late recovery. I kind of put it into three
Ooh,
categories. The early recovery, this is when, your symptoms are, you're just finding out what your symptoms are. They're pretty huge. They're impacting your daily activities. And then I consider a moderate recovery is when you finally your symptoms, you're getting them treated, you're learning to live with them, manage them better, adapt to them. And then in late recovery is when you're really comfortable with your new brain, but you're pushing yourself to learn and grow stronger, not only your brain, but also physically, but you're, mentally building up that mental resilience, that emotional intelligence, doing a lot of, self-reflection and improvement.
yeah, yeah. I like that late recovery. Uh, what has gotten better than perhaps you didn't expect to get better?
Well, the neural fatigue did get better. Initially, I was sleeping 12 to 14 hour days a day at night, 12 to 14 hours
Right.
at night, and then taking a 2 hour nap. And now I can function off 8 to 9 hours at night and skip the nap. I think that's a huge improvement. Now, that didn't happen overnight, though. That was over the last decade.
Yeah, exactly. You think this stuff is eventually going to disappear, but instead you kind of learn to live and work around it. I think one of the things that I've always appreciated about you is you recognize those daily little victories and how they add up. And that's what I hear you saying in a lot of your posts. Um, what's a difficult brain day look for like for you now?
It would be waking up and feeling, rolling out of bed and, feeling dizzy, that initial kind of sitting up and not just the brief, but it's pretty persistent. You got to sit there and wait a bit before you can stand up. And the dizziness persisting. I have difficulty with coordination, so I'm bumping into things, I'm dropping things, I'm knocking things off the table. My speech is off. I'm having a really difficult time talking. Sometimes I'll have a mild headache. Just feeling really, really tired and irritable and grumpy. That's a bad brain day.
How often are you getting them now compared to the first, let's say, 5, 7 years?
I would say it's really rare. It would be as often as I have me having a bad night of sleep. So, you normally sleep really good, but every once in a while I sleep poorly. But now that I work for myself, I think it's also easier to kind of manage my symptoms because I can sleep when I need to and rest when I want to and be active when I want to. And I think that works better for myself and my brain.
What are some of the signals that you recognize now that you didn't before that you realize, you know what, that's enough for today? Yeah.
Uh, 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 oh, you mean when I start to get tired and so forth? Well, I get really rummy. The brain fog is kind of just creeping in like the marina off the
Yeah.
ocean into the beach town. And I'm tired. My eyes are tired. I can't tolerate looking at my computer screen any longer. So that's definitely one clue that I need to shut things down. Sometimes it could be that I'm so tired I can't even read, and I love to read. And then, I can tell by my speech, like I I can't talk or I'm saying words
Yeah.
wrong. It really kicks in. And then my balance is off too.
Okay.
Yeah, so my walking gets worse. It looks like I've been drinking, but I haven't. And so those are some clues that, yeah, I need to shut things down and call it a day.
One of the difficulties, I think, is, at least for me, was learning awareness of recognizing those things. How do you, I guess there's a question there, but I'm not sure how to phrase it because it's like, how do you learn the awareness it's trial and error. I think we all have to go through the trial and error. Sometimes it's acceptance that, ah, I can't do this. Not today. That
Well,
kind of stuff.
Well, for me, what was key, and I talked about this before, was journaling. And
Yeah.
I would journal morning and night. And so in the morning, I would say, today's a good brain day or a bad brain day. This is my goal of what I want to accomplish, maybe fold the laundry, make a soup or something like that.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, I would reflect on how the day went. Like, did I get those two things done? If I didn't, why didn't I do that? Why didn't I get them done? Did I snap at one of my family members or a coworker? What led up to that? Being irritable? What could I have done to have prevented it? And then I would write a plan for the next time I was in that situation in my journal. And then at the beginning of the day, like say it happened at work, I would review that strategy at the beginning of the day and remind myself, so if this happens or this coworker says this that triggers me, this is going to be my talking points or my scripted
Right.
response. Yeah. And
So
that,
it's a learned, you- I guess that's how it changed for me too, because I have two journals, a gratitude and an anger journal.
oh,
Uh,
I like it. Can I read the
yeah,
anger one?
no, no, not, you're a lady. I don't want you reading anything in there. It's we have to have some tools to recognize what's going on, and it's what happens. And I think you'll agree. Your definition of that has changed. Uh, your definition of recovery has changed year by year.
Yes. And everyone's recovery is different. And some people, they get better in a couple weeks from a concussion or 6 months from a stroke, but other people are impacted their entire lives. So it really depends on how your brain um, responds or reacts to the assault on it, right? And where all our brains are different because we're all different, we have different personalities. And so you just never know what that recovery is going to look like. But one thing to remember is that it could be a significant amount of time to a lifetime. And there's a lot of like researchers and people in the space of brain injury, researchers and so forth that are really recognizing that. And hopefully the word will get out to the frontline healthcare workers.
Yeah, I hope so. The- I think one of the things too that at least I'm correct me if I'm wrong. I recognize this in you as I watch every episode that you post is um, you stop comparing yourself as much to the person you were before. I mean, isn't measuring yourself now as to that person a fool's folly to your recovery?
Well, for me, it didn't work. Some people
Really?
maybe that works, but for me, it didn't. And it was, the deficits, the challenges I had left were significantly impact my life. So I just, for some reason, I was like, I compared the two. I told you, I drew a line down a piece of paper. I wrote the before, the after, and for some reason, I just embraced the after. I was just
Right.
like, this, it's been a year plus. Things are still hard. I need to get comfortable with these and start to adapt to it and live my best life based on my ability to adapt and manage what I have. And I just don't know the secret sauce to that. Um, when I've gone to support groups or talked to other survivors or listened to others, brain injury podcasts, um, it's really important to move from your old self and going forward because and I hate to say letting go your old self because that's not nice. But
Right. Right.
but recognize your old self, take it along with you, but you've got to pick up and embrace the new self. Your old self is going to be the foundation of you, but the new stuff is going to be what you're adding on to that foundation. And that will help you with your transition and coping and managing your grieving process as you go along in life. It's not all rainbows and unicorns. I get very upset with my neurofatigue. It bums me out. I'm not back to my martial arts training the way I had done before the brain injury. And I tell myself, hey, it's okay to be mad. It's okay to be sad. But it's also okay to be happy that I'm able to do Tai Chi now. I can walk, go on walks now, do yoga. These are things I couldn't do, early in my recovery.
Yeah, I, I think that mentioned it before about self-awareness. I think some of us recognize the difference between healing and adapting. They can be two, and they to me, for me, it was two very different things. Healing is we're talking neuroplasticity, we're talking exercises, we're talking, mental health counseling, we're talking all of that. But
Hmm.
you're talking about the adaptability part where I got to take a break. I can do this today. I can't do it tomorrow, those kind of things. I think that's one of the strategies that helps us is separating healing and adaptability.
Exactly. So, like I would have conversations with some of my patients who had stroke or gait difficulties, and they just didn't want to use a cane or a walker, and I get it. But when they didn't, they would fall. And that's bad. And then when you fall, you can have an injury, but minimally, you're going to have this sense of anxiety of moving around because you're afraid you're going to fall again. But then, they would say, well, I do walk better with my cane or I do walk better with my walker. And it's like, but don't you want to get out there and walk and enjoy life and do the best you can? Um, so why aren't you using this tool? And the tools are key. It's not like I like walking around with a notepad in my pocket, pulling it out for my external memory tool, but I do it, and I do it for my brain because it saves me energy not to have to remember everything. But it's the tools help you support your brain to perform the best that it can.
Yeah, and adapting with tools creates healing. You know,
Yes.
Absolutely. Is there anything you wish somebody would have told you about long-term recovery during that first year?
Oh yeah, I wish someone had told me that this may take. See, I got the same story you probably got, 6 months to 2 years.
Yeah.
And I wish someone had said this could be a lifetime, And I wish there had been the discussion like, but it's okay. You can learn tools to manage it. You can adapt. Um, things may improve over time instead of saying, well, you're old, so it's probably going to get
Uh,
worse. I mean, who hasn't heard that?
yeah, exactly.
I
You
don't want to
just want
hear
to punch
that.
them.
Exactly. And then yeah, and then discussing the neuroplasticity and giving you the list of things to support your brain's health over the long run. But yeah, I'd wish someone had said, yeah, I did have one psychologist say that I would most likely have to retire early because I wouldn't be able to keep up with the demands of my job.
Okay.
And but that didn't click to like recovery. And when he said it, I was like, I hope not.
Don't we all? That was the first question I asked. When can I go back to work?
Exactly.
One of the things I think a lot of us do, and maybe you've been through this, maybe not. How many times have you been? I know I have been through. I should have been further along by now. Damn it, Ralph, when are you going to get better?
No, mine was more like, oh crap, I'm not better.
Yeah, yeah. You know,
Like,
why aren't I walking without the walker already?
yeah, yeah, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, why are my emotions still all over the place? Why
Okay.
is my body not moving the way I'm telling it? And yeah, it's
It can be.
crazy.
Yeah, it can be. You know, one of the things I like to talk about is identity shift. And after the crash, your book, which we'll talk about later, You described spending years trying to return to your former self before realizing you were never going to be exactly that person again. Eventually, the stranger in your head became your new brain, and together you became the new Kelly. Who is the Kelly today compared with Kelly before the injury? I love that phrase from the book, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Um, well, definitely somebody. Okay, so I was always on the go and I had goals. And um I would say I was more controlling, like thought I had more control over my life, or had this misconception of having control over our life. Because the truth is we don't, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But I'm a mom, I'm going to work and I'm taking care of my kids and improving my professional career. And then all of a sudden that changes overnight. And then it was amazing. I heard something, a podcast, or was listening to a book, and it was saying you need to be comfortable with uncertainty. Now that was huge for
That's
me.
big. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that's true because the entire time I'm recovering, especially earlier, I was like, why am I not better?
Yes.
And then I would just think, well, we don't know how fast my brain's going to heal. We don't know how fast somebody's brain's going to recover. And I just started living pretty much well, I lived day to day, but when looking over the grand scheme of the picture, it was like every 6 months and then every year, it would do like a year reflection. And so yeah, so the Kelly afterwards was like got really comfortable with uncertainty, more relaxed, like, oh well, that didn't work out. Let's try this. Maybe it wasn't meant to be, kind of thing. So yeah, that's I think I have more patience and more flexibility than I did
Yeah.
before.
I definitely learned patience from mine. Yeah. I had no patience before. That was something I learned. I, I'm not sure how to ask this without sounding silly, but um, there's two parts of the question, and it's really the same question. What parts of the old Kelly did you find hardest to hold on to, or what parts of the old Kelly did you eventually have to let go?
The hardest part was that energy bunny.
Okay.
I loved going, going, going. And now I'm sad that I've had to that I don't have that energy and that capacity or the bandwidth to do the things that I was doing. I was doing tons of stuff, like most people. And now I just, I can only take on so much. I really have to set those boundaries with family and friends. I have to set boundaries with myself and my sense of ability to accomplish certain goals. Um, so that was the big difference with the change of the old to the new. But the other one was that before you're talking about personality changes, before I used to just be a t-shirt and jeans kind of gal. And then afterwards, and I was very logical. I was not creative. I was, very logical, do, do, do. And then after the brain injury, then I was fascinated with fashion and finding the perfect color lipstick and
Oh my
earrings.
gosh.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And I went on this shopping spree, which was not good at the time. And then I got really creative and 2 years into my recovery, I had taught myself how to knit. And so I started knitting and doing cross stitch and coloring and just really getting artsy and creative and working on, decorating my house differently and all. Yeah, it was weird.
I haven't had that one before. Not at
I
all.
mean, not that there's really a left side, right side kind of brain, but I felt like I went from being a left side, very logical, to the point, no fluff. And then the next day I woke up and I was like, where are the rainbows and fairies? Let's paint, let's do puzzles. Let's redecorate the front room. I not that I did that. That was
Yeah,
later
yeah.
on, but it was a big
Well,
change.
these experiences, I mean, we go through the identity shift of what was me, what am I, who am I now, what am I now, all of those kind of things. And then we go through uh, the identity shift, recognizing that this is what's going to be from now on. Um, is there anything maybe about the person you've become that you don't want to give back or wouldn't, or actually wouldn't want to give back?
I would not want to let go of my patience, and I feel like my understanding and empathy has gotten to the 10th power. I would not want to give those things back. I would not want to give back the fact that I live a more intentional life rather than one chasing goals and trying to keep up the Joneses type thing or a competitive life.
Yeah, I like that. Um, is that what has changed about yourself through your experience that you didn't know you had in you before?
Well, I would say that I have more understanding of the people around me and the community, of course, more understanding for my patients because I just didn't think about how a brain injury or a brain disease like epilepsy, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis can really change a person. And you were talking about personalities. I mean, some people can go from mild manner to having bursts of anger, you know, and road rage issues. Um,
Sure.
they they could become paranoid, not trusting, um, or they may not have that self-awareness that you and I had, fortunately. Some people after a brain injury lose that self-awareness. I did the first few months after mine, and thankfully got it back. Um, but so when because of that, so when I talk to a patient or I see someone, maybe their behavior is inappropriate, like maybe they're angry at the airport. We've seen those videos, right? And I just kind of think, instead of going, oh my gosh, what a jerk, and now I think, oh, do they have multiple sclerosis and now they've been tired out and they're just fatigued and now they can't control their emotions? Or are they a previous brain injury survivor and the lights have been too much, the noise, the engine on the airplane super loud, and now they're just sensory overloaded and just losing their shit.
Yeah, exactly.
And for a good reason, not because they're a jerk, but because they have an organic brain issue, and so that made me a more understanding person. So when I see something, I don't react to it. I just, I think, well, when I see someone speeding down the road really fast, I think, well, maybe they have to get home quickly because they have diarrhea, explosive diarrhea, or their child fell out at school. And I just let them go and I don't let their speeding bother me. But before, I might have, let it bother me and said, oh my gosh, what a jerk. Who do they think they are? Why are they
Yeah.
driving like that? And so it really just changed my perspective about the world, the people in my community, people in other, all over the world, if I hear of something. And I just feel like I'm more open-minded, more understanding, more willing to listen and learn before speaking and talking and sharing my input.
Right. You have a unique perspective that most people don't have because you're both a TBI survivor and a neurology nurse practitioner. You, that kind of gives you a front row seat, as you said, to struggling with many of the same things you did. Um, do you still see patients, and how has being a survivor changed the way you practice being a nurse practitioner?
Well, I have retired,
Right.
but when I practiced, what I recognized is a lot of people had struggled with a lot of the same things I struggled with. I was really surprised that some of the strategies and tools I learned that helped me would help someone with Parkinson's continue to work longer. I was able to speak to difficulty with sleeping or with speech with my multiple sclerosis patients. So I just really felt like I was this ambassador because my patients would come with me with these vague symptoms and I would suss them out with a couple questions and then I would say, "Oh yeah, you're having, fragmented sleep. You're waking up in the middle of the night or you're struggling to find your words." And then I would say, and then I would educate them about higher cognitive functions and that they demand higher levels of energy to function properly. And they were just like, I would hear them say, "You're the first provider that has heard me." And I just wanted to go, "No, I'm the first provider you've seen who's been there, done there, and got the t-shirt."
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I was talking to somebody, interviewing a really famous guy in the neuroplasticity world, a physical therapist. I'm sure you know him, but I don't know if I can mention his name. But um, he told me, I asked about how the system is failing a lot of us, at least early on. Um, and he told me that it falls short because most things like neuroplasticity and the knowledge of it takes 17 years to get through the full medical system to be an accepted practice. Um, how, where do you think the medical system still falls short with the long-term effects of brain injury or stroke or MS, any of them?
Oh man, I could talk for hours on that one.
Good. We'll do another show on it.
I think that, I think there should be more concussion centers for outpatient care for people with mild to moderate brain injuries. I think that there is, um, I'm not a real big proponent of the American medical system right now because it seems to be falling apart in general anyway.
Yeah,
But at least when you do have a severe brain injury, severe to moderate, you get admitted into the hospital, right? You're on the trauma unit or the neuro floor, and then you get discharged to a rehab facility. And then you're there for several weeks or months, and then you get discharged home. And then when you're discharged home, then there's home physical therapy, occupational therapy, and all that stuff. But if you have like a light, moderate to mild brain injury, not that any brain injury is mild, um, then, and you're not admitted, you're just sent home, then the system has no way of funneling you through the appropriate care that you need. As it should be, "Oh, you've had a concussion. Okay, you're going to go to your primary
right.
care doctor." Your primary care doctor is going to know symptoms persist past 2 weeks. Refer to physical medicine rehab doctor. This isn't happening, or put it all together in a building and call it a concussion center, an outpatient concussion center. That's what we're lacking. And one of the things I talk about and promote is the fact that if someone has a head injury or a stroke, they should not be sent home and told and given a sheet of paper and said, if you have these symptoms, if that, call your doctor. Well, a lot of people don't have awareness
Yeah,
that they may have these symptoms. And then a lot of the symptoms are dizzy, nausea, vomiting, seizures, but it's not, you don't see sound sensitivity, irritability, difficulty at work. These are all symptoms you should be following up with your doctor. So I don't think it should be the onus should be put on the patient. I think the onus should be put on the healthcare workers, and the it should be a protocol. Someone has some type of potential concussion, you follow up within 2 weeks, they're not better. You refer them to, physical medicine rehab, so forth. That's what I would like to see. But you follow as the primary care provider or the brain injury specialist, like I was in neurology. What I would do is I would follow them up in 2 weeks, and then every month for 3 months, then every 3 months for 6 months, then every year after that, to make sure they don't fall through the cracks, that things haven't changed. Maybe they need different therapy, maybe they're plateauing and need to be challenged. One of the things I read from the Brain Injury Association of America was that 1 in 5 traumatic brain injury survivors, 5 years after, still had suicidal ideation. So mental health should be monitored for a minimum of 5 years. And then the other thing I used to do is I used to, do a history, and I'd say, well, have you ever hit your head, been in a car accident, fallen off by? And every time, or if I would do a chart review, I'd look at all the emergency visits. And if there was a concussion in 2002, it was put in my chart. If there was a concussion, maybe a TIA, in 2025, that would go in my chart. And to me, that accumulation of assaults on the brain increases the patient's risk of developing dementia or being injured.
Yeah. Well, and again, that's your unique perspective to a certain extent that you've got the medical background to um, be able to recognize that in your own recovery. I think one of the things I like what we both do is by saying this, it also gives the onus back on the patient. You said it shouldn't be, but it gives it back to us to be captain of our own team and say, you know what, that therapist ain't doing shit for me. You're fired.
Right.
We're allowed to do that. I think a lot of us need to get more, I don't want to say aggressive, but we need to get more assertive about our own recoveries, you
I
know?
agree. Yeah. But
Yeah, I think,
some
go
people
ahead.
just don't have the energy or the bandwidth to do that though, Ralph,
Oh,
too.
yeah, the cognitive bandwidth isn't there.
Yeah.
So our
Yes.
care partners have to step in,
Yes.
and if
Yes.
you don't have a care partner, you're single and going through this, get a social worker, you know,
Exactly. Yes.
That's the things that they don't tell us that we're missing. There's 14 different therapies in my mind. Physical, occupational, blah, blah, plus acupuncture, chiropractor, massage, mental health. It took me 3 years and a couple dark moments before I got some counseling to get through all of this crap. So,
Mm-hmm.
I think what we do gives our listeners a little bit more ammunition to say, you know what? Come here. I'm not going to sit on this bike while you walk away. We need to
Right.
challenge this or that. You know
Yes.
what you want. If that therapist is just putting you on a bike and walking away, change therapist, you know.
Yeah, or if you have a therapist that says, "Well, it looks like this is it. This is the best it's going to be," then no, you need to move on,
Yeah.
find someone else. You've got to, I worked with some people that their diagnosis is just going to get worse and worse and worse, right?
Yeah.
Parkinson's, multiple
Yeah.
sclerosis. I never gave up. I was like, let's try this, let's try that, let's push this. Why, what you want is to, as a provider, you want to fight for the quality of life of the
Yes.
individual. And you want to maybe not get hope to get better, but to put some control back in their hands, like, recommending, well, why don't you change your diet a little bit here, drink more water up front during the day so you don't have dizziness, give them tools that they can use to help improve the quality of life. Don't just go, oh, it's Parkinson's, it's just going to get worse.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Why not prolong some quality
Yeah,
instead of
yeah.
letting it go to hell in a handbasket? You know, again, and I've talked about this before, and I'm not blowing smoke. I really appreciate your advocacies. I like what you do. You do a lot of good things out there. So I want to get into your personal story a little bit about what, I know there was a point in time when all of a sudden it's like, I need to do this as an advocate, but not only as a self-advocate, but I need to share it. And how do I support other people in self-advocacy for themselves? What are survivors not being, um, still not being heard about that causes us to, I don't know if that's the right question. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about TBI, stroke, MS, all of the brain attacks. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about out there, and that frustrates all of us. What is it that causes us to get on a damn radio, get on a podcast, write a book? Yeah, and I've learned a lot about myself. What have you learned about yourself that changed your understanding of recovery when you started writing a book?
Well, when I was early in my recovery, I couldn't read very much. It was like 5 or 10 minutes, and headache was coming on, memory was forgetting what I read, so forth. And I I really wanted to support myself getting better because I felt like I wasn't getting that information from my doctor. And so I was reading as many recovery books as I could, but my energy and my time was limited. And so when I decided to write a book, and the reason why I decided to write a book was because I had been taken off work for 3 months to rehab. And the 2 weeks before going back to work, I was freaking out because I didn't know what my brain needed to support it to function so I could be a safe nurse practitioner, an
Right.
efficient and productive employee. And I couldn't get that information. I was going from website to books to my therapist notes. It was horrible. And I just remember thinking, I don't want anybody to go through this. I was freaked out. I was anxious. I didn't know what to do. And so when I wrote my book, I made sure that it was the tools and strategies that worked for me and that I learned from my specialists, and that my book was quick, to the point, easy to read, easy to pick up, put down. You could write in it, take notes, and then also have it on Audible because sometimes after a stroke or a traumatic brain injury, you can't read. It was really important that I paid the extra money and put
Right.
in the extra time and effort to have it on Audible because when I was in my early to moderate recovery, if your book wasn't on Audible, I couldn't benefit from it. And so it was just those kinds, that was what brought me to write my book was like, I didn't want anybody to go through what I went through, and I want it to be easily accessible. Then the book gets published, and I finally realized it. I don't know why it didn't click, but it clicked that I finally was able to get to other patients outside my exam room. So I could only help the people who came in and saw me. And now I can help people across the world now. And I'm really glad that the book has allowed me to do that.
What changed your recovery because of the book?
Well, I think that, writing a book there's a serious learning curve. And I had to learn so much that I didn't know before. And I think that really helped with my recovery with the neuroplasticity and getting over mental blocks, such as, is this going to be good enough? What are people going to think about it? Really just building up that growth mindset and that resilience to get past the fear of judgment and just do it and get my story out there.
Perfect. I need to, we're getting close to the end here, believe it or not. So please tell us more about, the book's name is After the Crash, correct?
Yep.
Okay. And then you just put out a second book, is the Brain Injury Journal.
Yeah, so I created it's called My Brain Injury Recovery Journal because I'm such a big proponent of journaling. I feel like it really helped a lot with my recovery, but when I would encourage that in my patients, they would say, "Well, I don't know how to journal." And so the journal has checkoff boxes. So if you're not able to write as well, you can check the boxes off. There's
Oh, very cool.
prompts. Yeah, there's prompts in there. There's an encouragement to journal in the morning and then at night. I made it really big and chunky. It's like 389 pages or something like that. So you can't lose it. 'Cause
Okay.
that's one of the things that
So
people
it's
say.
not that much to read per se. It's just so
It's
you
just
don't lose it.
really big and you can draw in it. Even drawing helps with the brain to heal. But handwriting is super key in cognitive rehab. And it's amazing the all the areas of the brain that reading and writing, handwriting engage. And I really believe it's a good a great tool to help with recovery.
Is this purely on Amazon? Do you have a website that people can go buy these or
On my website at kellytuttle.org, you can purchase my book. But the journal is on Amazon, and you can write in my brain injury recovery journal, or you can type in my name, Kelly Tuttle, and it'll pop up. And that's how you'll find it. But yeah, it's just on Amazon. Sorry.
and that's what two T's?
Two T's.
Okay. All right. And then your podcast. Please tell our listeners about that.
Right. So if you want to hear a lot of the stuff that Ralph and I have talked about, you can also join my podcast, The Mindful Return Brain Injury Back to Work. And I'm posting new episodes every 2 weeks. I try to keep them shorter than 30 minutes because I know my listeners only have so much energy and cognitive reserve. So I try to keep it short to the point. I'm a solo podcast, so you're just going to hear me talk so I can get straight to the point for you to share the information I want to share with you. And then I'm really hoping next year I'll bump that up to a podcast a week.
Very nice. Some quick closing questions for you. If you could sit beside someone who has just realized that their injury isn't going away in a few months or weeks, what would you want them to hear from you?
I would tell them to ask for a referral to a physical medicine rehab doctor and get my book.
And I call them physiologists, right?
A physiatrist.
Physiatrist, that's it. That's the term. One more thing on the book, though, before the rest of the quick questions. For someone who listening says, I'm several years into this, it's too late for a book like this to help me, what would you tell them?
I would say no because recovery can happen over a lifetime and it might have some other pearls that you haven't thought about using or trigger you to recognize a symptom that maybe you're going to the wrong person for that symptom and you need to see somebody else. Because I do have lists of symptoms and specialists to see for those symptoms.
For the person several years in recovery who feels like they should be further along by now, what do you want to tell them?
I would tell them that to be kind to themselves and to realize the brain kind of decides when it wants to get better, not you. And that as long as you're supporting your brain in healthy ways, making sleep priority, eating healthy, exercising, doing your therapies, you need to tell yourself, even though I'm not where I want to be right now, I'm doing my best.
Nice.
And the other thing I would recommend is keeping a journal and looking back on your journal entries and seeing how far you've come.
That's a big one. Look back. I look back on the anger journals and think,
Yes.
holy cow, wow, what a difference. Anyway, one more. Kelly, finish the sentence for me. Today, recovery means,
Becoming a new person.
okay, I like it. I like it. Kelly, thank you so much. Anything you want to add for today?
Yeah, like last time you asked me any book I would recommend,
Yeah,
and I said The Brain That Changes Itself. Well, Dr. Norman Diagi, I don't know how you say his name, has a new book out.
The Brain's Way of Healing.
Yes, I'm so excited. I haven't read it yet, but it is out. He has the two books. The first one was fantastic. And I think they're both on Audible too. But these are really great books. They talk about the neuroplasticity and having hope. So
I do remember The Brain That Changes Itself. My issue remembering everything. But I ordered that right after we talked. So that was a fantastic book. It
it
really
was a
was.
good book. So he's got a
Yes, I like that.
second book out. So I wanted to tell you about that.
Thank you. I'll make sure we post that too. Again, thank you for coming back and giving us a chance to talk, not just about what happened to you, but about what happens after the story everyone usually hears, the years of adapting, changing, advocating, and continuing to become who we are. To our listeners, your story matters, your recovery is worth fighting for, and you are never alone on this path. Catch the wave. You are warriors achieving victories every day. And remember our challenge to you today. If something you heard was would help another survivor, care partner, family member, professional, share this conversation with at least two people. Kelly, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And my pleasure.